The challenge of conquering Asia. Alexander the Great's quest to conquer Asia was not just an audacious military campaign. It was an extraordinary journey through vastly different cultures, unpredictable terrain, and relentless resistance. Beginning with his invasion of the Persian Empire and stretching all the way to the Indian subcontinent, Alexander's Asian conquests revealed both his military genius and the extreme challenges of ruling a multicultural empire. His path through Asia was marked by incredible victories, daunting obstacles, and a vision to unify East and West that would test both his army and his own endurance. The Persian Empire, an immense first step. When Alexander ascended to the Macedonian throne in 336 BCE, the Persian Empire was the most powerful civilization in the world, spanning from Egypt to the borders of India. Taking on Persia was an ambitious goal that no Greek leader had dared to seriously consider, and many viewed it as impossible. However, Alexander's vision went beyond simple conquest. He sought not only to defeat Persia but also to unify its lands and peoples under his rule. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed the Hellespont with 35,000 men, the first step into Asia and a symbolic crossing that marked the beginning of his campaign against Persia. Immediately, he faced the daunting challenge of sustaining his army far from Macedonia, dependent on unfamiliar lands for resources. Alexander understood that to succeed, he would need both military victories and local support. The early victories at the Battle of Granicus and the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE were crucial in establishing Macedonian control over Asia Minor. However, they were also preludes to the larger battles that awaited him deeper in Persian territory. Alexander's first challenge in Asia was to neutralize Darius III, the Persian king, who commanded a massive army that dwarfed Alexander's forces. The Persian military was not only vast but also skilled in the use of cavalry and chariots, both of which would test Alexander's adaptability on the battlefield. Darius and the battles for Persia. In 331 BCE, Alexander confronted Darius III at the Battle of Gaugamela, a climactic encounter that would decide the fate of Persia. The sheer scale of Darius's army presented Alexander with one of his most difficult tactical challenges. Darius had chosen the open plains of Gaugamela for their suitability to his chariots and cavalry, hoping to overwhelm the Macedonians with speed and numbers. Alexander's strategy required perfect coordination and an unprecedented level of discipline from his troops. Through a series of complex maneuvers, Alexander managed to draw the Persians out of their formations, creating gaps that his cavalry could exploit. His strategic brilliance paid off. The Persian lines broke, and Darius fled the battlefield, leaving his empire vulnerable to Alexander's advance. However, while the victory at Gaugamela marked a significant milestone, it was not the end of Alexander's challenges in Asia. Alexander's victory opened the door to the Persian heartland, but his conquest was far from secure. He now faced the monumental task of occupying and administering a vast and diverse empire. Persian cities, such as Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, had their own identities, traditions, and leaders, and Alexander had to earn their loyalty. While he adopted Persian dress and customs in an effort to bridge cultural divides, this tactic was met with resistance from both Persians and his own Macedonian officers, who viewed these actions as betrayals of Greek values. Bactria and Sogdia, the rugged heart of Central Asia. As Alexander continued eastward, he encountered new challenges in the rugged regions of Bactria and Sogdia, modern-day Afghanistan and Uzbekistan. These mountainous areas were difficult to access and nearly impossible to control, with local tribes skilled in guerrilla warfare and resistant to foreign rule. Unlike the centralized Persian Empire, these regions were fragmented, with fiercely independent leaders who saw Alexander as an invader rather than a liberator. The rough terrain and harsh climate tested the endurance of Alexander's troops, who were unaccustomed to the extremes of the Central Asian landscape. The local tribes, expert in ambush tactics, inflicted heavy losses on Alexander's forces, forcing him to adopt unconventional methods of warfare. In one notable engagement, Alexander captured the Sogdian Rock, a fortress perched high on a cliff that was thought to be impregnable. By sending a small force of climbers to scale the cliff under the cover of darkness, he managed to capture the fortress, stunning the defenders and cementing his reputation as a commander capable of overcoming impossible odds. Despite these victories, Alexander found it difficult to maintain control over the region. The people of Bactria and Sogdia resisted Hellenization and viewed Macedonian rule with suspicion. To establish loyalty, Alexander married Roxana, a Bactrian princess, symbolizing his commitment to uniting cultures within his empire. However, the ongoing skirmishes and the lack of a clear end to the campaign began to erode the morale of his soldiers, who grew increasingly weary of the unending march eastward. India, the edge of the known world. In 327 BCE, Alexander crossed the Hindu Kush Mountains and entered the Indian subcontinent, a region even more alien to the Macedonians than the lands they had previously encountered. Here, Alexander faced King Porus, a powerful local ruler whose army included war elephants, a fearsome weapon that the Macedonian soldiers had never seen before. The elephants presented a new tactical challenge. Their sheer size and strength allowed them to trample infantry and break through traditional formations. The two armies met at the Battle of the Hydaspes River in 326 BCE, one of the most grueling and strategically complex battles of Alexander's career. Porus positioned his elephants at the front of his army, using them to create a wall of brute force. Alexander responded with a series of feints and flanking maneuvers, using his cavalry to outmaneuver the elephants and target the vulnerable Indian infantry behind them. The battle was hard-fought, with heavy losses on both sides, but Alexander's adaptability and superior tactics ultimately led to a Macedonian victory. Impressed by Porus's bravery, Alexander allowed him to retain his throne and rule as a vassal king. This decision demonstrated Alexander's understanding that ruling through cooperation, rather than sheer force, would be essential for maintaining control over the distant lands he conquered. However, the march into India had taken a toll on his army. Exhausted by years of constant warfare and facing an endless monsoon season, Alexander's soldiers eventually refused to march any further east. Conquering Asia had pushed his men to their limits, and they demanded to return home. The return journey and the trials of empire. Reluctantly, Alexander agreed to turn back, leading his army on a grueling journey through the harsh Gedrosian desert on the way back to Persia. The return march proved disastrous, as intense heat, lack of supplies, and dehydration led to heavy casualties. By the time they reached Babylon in 324 BCE, Alexander's once mighty army was severely depleted, and the toll of the campaign weighed heavily on both the soldiers and their king. Alexander's conquest of Asia had extended his empire across an enormous swath of territory, but holding it together proved a challenge. While he had successfully defeated local rulers and integrated some aspects of Persian and Indian culture into his empire, the vastness of Asia and its diverse populations made it difficult to establish a unified government. Alexander's efforts to blend Greek and Eastern cultures through intermarriage, local alliances, and the spread of Hellenistic ideals were met with mixed success. In his final years, Alexander tried to solidify his empire by establishing administrative centers, founding cities, and promoting Greek culture in the conquered lands. However, his efforts to foster unity were hindered by the cultural and linguistic barriers that separated the Macedonians from the people they ruled. The task of governing such a sprawling, diverse empire ultimately required a level of centralized administration that Alexander's military-oriented campaigns could not provide. Legacy of the Asian Campaign. Alexander's campaign across Asia remains one of the most ambitious military endeavors in history. His conquest spread Greek culture and knowledge throughout the East, laying the foundations for the Hellenistic period, a cultural era that saw the blending of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions. The cities he founded, such as Alexandria in Egypt and many others across Asia, became centers of learning and commerce, attracting scholars, merchants, and artisans from across the known world. Yet, the challenges of conquering and ruling Asia exposed the limits of Alexander's empire. Although he dreamed of a world united under his rule, his rapid expansion left him with an empire too vast and diverse to govern effectively. Alexander's early death in 323 BCE only further complicated matters, as his generals, known as the Diadochi, divided his empire into smaller kingdoms, each struggling to maintain control over its territories. In the end, the challenge of conquering Asia was not simply a military one. It was a test of endurance, diplomacy, and the ability to adapt to diverse cultures and environments. While Alexander's conquests achieved unprecedented geographical reach, they also highlighted the difficulties of maintaining unity in a world of profound cultural differences. Alexander's vision of a unified empire ultimately gave way to the realities of governing such vast lands. But his legacy lived on through the cultural and intellectual exchanges he inspired, shaping the ancient world for generations to come.